Clarity is one of the greatest blessings. It's a powerful statement that there's no joy like the joy of resolving doubts. However, the big question is, how do you find clarity in times of confusion? Look around the world today. Conflicting narratives in the media, in politics, virtually in every sector of the world. Self-interest blinds people, creates prejudice, and therefore, how do you find your way? How is a person supposed to find clarity? In our personal lives, in our collective lives, our communal lives, our social lives. I mean, it begins on a very basic level with an individual. So you're speaking to someone. How do you know they're lying or they're telling the truth? Or telling a white lie or semi-truth? This is vital in our journey in life to have clarity. And especially in times when information is disseminated so quickly and so globally through technology. So please join me in this continuing series of our 60-day journey, finding clarity in times of confusion. Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we'll be speaking about a continuing series of the 60-day journey, finding clarity in times of confusion. This program is dedicated by Suzette Allen in memory of her dear friend Linda Libby Ginsburg. May her blessed memory, beloved teacher and wonderful friend. Clarity is one of the greatest blessings in life. Our sages tell us there is no joy like the joy of resolving doubts. And we all know what doubts feel like. They paralyze you. Even if you come to a conclusion that may be wrong, there's a certain type of peace of mind that you're not being plagued by the doubt. Should you do this? Should you do that? The pros and cons. How much it creates procrastination. As I said, paralysis is the right word. The opposite of doubts, of course, is clarity, certainty. The question, of course, is how do you find that? Especially in a world like today, that due to self-interest and corruption and the different prejudices people have, and I'm not going to list all the reasons, we have all these alternative narratives. You speak to one person, you hear one story. The other person tells you exactly the same situation, a completely different perspective. Called propaganda. But how do you know who's the one that's telling the truth and who's not? Like that classic joke, if someone says to you, I always lie. What do you do with that? Are they telling the truth or are they lying? If they always lie, then when they say, I always lie, that's a lie. So you see the circular logic and you can never resolve that. So clarity and confusion can also be compared to light and dark. When you're in the dark, you can't find your way. You shine a light, and it shows you the way. Now, I wish it was that simple when it comes to truth and falsity and deception. And remember, this affects every aspect of our lives, because, simply put, all trust is based on a certain element of, you know certainly that the person that you are trusting is someone you can trust. How do you know they're trustworthy? We all know the effects of betrayal, violating our our trust, what damage that does. So how do you establish truth in a world that is so filled with lies? In Hasidic lexicon, there's an expression that the world is a lying world, a deceptive world. Alma de Shikra in Hebrew, Sheker. The opposite of emes in Hebrew, truth. Just as an aside, I don't know if it's an aside, maybe it's quite relevant. In Hebrew, the letters emes is made up of the first, last, and middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet consists of 22 letters. The aleph is the first. The saf, which is the last letter in emes, is the 22nd letter, and the mem is the 11th letter. And the reason for that is because that's what truth is. It's through and through. From the beginning, through the middle, to the end. If something is only true in one corner, it's not real truth. Sheker, interestingly, lie, is made up of 3 letters that are right near each other. The next to 3 last letters of the alphabet. One of the explanations for that is because sheker ein lo raglayim, they say. Sheker has no feet to stand on. So every lie surrounds itself with other lies to protect it. You see, when you lie, you're going to have to usually say another lie to protect the first lie. Truth is self-contained. It's true. It doesn't need outside support. Sometimes to verify truth, you may need evidence and witnesses. But truth fundamentally has that absolute clarity, and therefore it could be spread out. In lies, everything lies commune, so to speak, to support each other. But back to the question, finding clarity in times of confusion. So let's break this down. In truth, if we were completely subjective and emotionally impulsive creatures, and the only thing we'd have to rely on is our intuition, which could be manipulated, it would be extremely difficult to find clarity, especially if someone's trying to hide it. Now, even in the animal kingdom, animals are quite shrewd when it comes to their survival, to their breeding. But it's primarily innate in their nature. They're wired that way to have the proper instincts. And they've been proven to get beyond when someone tries to trap them or fool them. But I don't want to talk about animals here because it's a very different discussion. But human beings were blessed with something additional, and that's intellect, our minds. So mind is working at its best. It has a certain element of objectivity, more than a certain element. The problem is, of course, that the mind can be bribed, so to speak, and biased by our emotional interests. That's why I say when the mind is working at its best, it essentially is an arbiter that's not meant to provide a subjective opinion. The mind is like sending out scouts to do research. And come back and tell me what you find. I don't need your opinion. I don't need any conclusions. I just tell me all the facts that you found. So in a good aspect of research where there's no biases and no prejudices and no preconceived notions, the mind will just objectively report back, here are the facts. Here's what I was able to discover. Now, obviously, if you have a con artist manipulator who's smart and knows how to cover their tracks, the mind can be fooled. But the mind also knows that fact. And therefore you take that into account and you say, based on my observation, here's what I saw, but keep in mind, I got this information from a certain individual who, for all I know, is biased. Sometimes you find out that bias. That's part of the research. So in a healthy situation, what's happening is you begin with a state of confusion, meaning we don't know what clarity is, and you start a discovery. A healthy discovery will probe and explore and interview and question and challenge in order to find what is the clear and crystal truth. Now we have to always take into account, as I said, subjective interest that may manipulate or may fool the mind. If someone is biased, of course, their conclusions may be biased. So that's a general approach. So then why is it so difficult? In that context, we have to then look at who we getting our source, or who our sources are. Maybe we shouldn't be trusting the media. If you see a media that is biased because one direction or another, and the elephant in the room is very obvious, especially today's pre-election primary campaigns, you see it pretty clearly. And this is I'm not taking any position here, I'm just simply stating, you go to one cable station, pretty much will be pro one candidate. Another one, pretty much pro the other. Here and there, they may throw in something to make it seem like that there's certain objectivity. So if that's a source and you establish that they're biased, then you know it's not a source. So perhaps are we over-relying on sources that should not be trusted? Or it should be trusted with a grain of salt. So that's the obvious way to count. So then why does that happen? Maybe because we're lazy. It's so much easier just to turn on a television or the internet or social media and get your information from there. When I say lazy, I'm not saying that in a critical way. It means, why should I go do my research? Officially, these are the people supposed to give it to me. But we know today's world, you can't just assume that. So it goes back to your responsibility, if you do want to indeed find clarity, is that you're going to have to find ways either to compare sources, to challenge them. And you may not be able to find a honest narrative in one place. It may have to piece it together from different sources. I'm talking here, I just spoke more like media politics. But the same is true in other areas. Be considering the fact that self-interest drives many things. So someone comes to sell you something. Think of a marketer. And they're very good at manipulating your emotions. This product you can't live without. And you have to buy it immediately because the sale will be over in 30 seconds or in 30 minutes. All the gimmicks and tricks to get you to dish out some money. So you have to understand the same idea. Your mind has to be the one that counters your emotional reactions. Because the emotions can be easily manipulated. And the mind has to say, 1 second here. Did I go look for this, or is it being sold to me? If I really need it, why don't I go look for on my own? Let me compare different prices, different vendors. Obviously, the other person on the other side is going to try to convince you this is now the opportunity of a lifetime. So here again, the shining light in this darkness of confusion comes to the mind. However, we have to go a little deeper, of course, because the mind, not only can it be biased, the mind also is limited. You can't know everything with the mind. So now we get to something more profound, and that is the resonating truths. I'll call them the resonating truths of your inner soul, which is not so simple, because just because it resonates doesn't mean you haven't been manipulated. Because that's part of manipulation, to make it sound like it resonates. And there are people that are very good at that. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not looking necessarily people who are deliberately trying to con us. Just looking at the whole situation, that we are looking to find that clarity. So this takes us back to what is our compass? What is our barometer? And now you go back into your childhood. Very often it begins with our parents. Our parental attitudes to things shaped our own. An example. Someone's coming, knocks on your door. You're a little child. Your mother answers the door. They want some charity. But your mother is a suspicious type, and she right away is wary. Is this person really doing charity, or they're just, here to raise money for themselves. So she starts asking questions. And then she comes to the determination, especially there's some parents, everyone's guilty until proven innocent. What do you think is going to happen to you, the impressionable child? Your attitude will be shaped by that. That you don't give anyone the benefit of the doubt. You're always suspicious. We all have to be obviously careful and prudent. But if there's an over-suspicious parent who doesn't trust, you often will develop that. So right there, you have a limit. So even though your mind may be objective, but you've been shaped in a certain way. On the other hand, if your parents and your early formative experiences in school, friends, are such that had a certain healthy attitude, that in turn will inform and empower you with the same tools. The tools of discretion, not just to buy into something, and the other way around, and not just to dismiss something. Because you also have the other possibility. Gullible parents or gullible influencers in our lives. And therefore we sometimes become gullible until we get hurt. So all this is part of the consideration. But I want to go back to, again, our compass. So if you're going to do a self-analysis, and this 60-day journey is exactly that, you want to ask yourself, how good is my compass? How much can I rely on it? The things I learned from my parents, from my educators, from my early influences that shaped and formed me, how valuable is that? How objective is that? Now, it could be one extreme to the other. It can really be terrible, that you can't trust that at all, those sources, those influences, I should say. Or you've learned that you could, or something in between. What you're really looking to do is, yes, use your mind to find clarity, but really find that inner compass, the inner GPS, so to speak, that becomes the standard by which you measure things. And you see this, healthy people who have an instinct, a healthy instinct. They look at someone, I'm not saying jump to any conclusions, but sometimes something rubs them the wrong way. It's good to have friends like that. I'm not talking about overly paranoid or suspicious people. People who just have a good instinct. Like, let's say someone's offering you a business deal. It's always good to get advice from another party. What do you think? Because you may be biased, the other party may be more trained, and they may say, sounds good, explore it. They may want to see the documents, they want to meet the prospects that you're dealing with. And this is true across the board. I don't know what it means in business, it also means in finding your soulmate in life, making other important decisions in life. So having an outside person, especially a trained person, helps you develop a healthy instinct, which I'm calling the healthy compass. The point I'm getting at is that the soul, your very soul, has all it needs to find clarity in this world. The problem is it gets clouded and blocked and impeded by many of the factors I spoke about before. Number one, the subjectivity that comes from our early childhood and influences. Number two, from society, peer pressure, media. And number three, from the biases, someone trying to sell you something. People with agendas. So all those factors, when you take them into account, will help you clarify things instead of just buying into them. And utilizing this tool of consulting, which we do, everyone does that. You're going to buy a house, you're not going to just do it on your own. You're going to get advice, what mortgage to take. You're going to get lawyers involved. The same thing with anything that's a serious decision, a medical decision. You're going to go to a doctor. Not one doctor, two doctors, experts. Why do we do that? Why can't we just figure it out on our own? Because they know something we don't. They're trained. That's their expertise. The same thing in making decisions that sometimes you think you're equipped to make. Nothing cannot hurt, and it can only help to have a mentor, an advisor, a coach, a friend, Whatever name you give it, someone that helps you clarify. Ultimately, your goal is to dig beyond all the smoke screens and get to that inner compass of your soul. Because your soul has that clarity. And you'll see it in different times. You hear a song, for instance, that resonates with you. Why is it resonating? No one trained you to hear that song or to touch you. Because the song is able to pierce outer layers and filters and touches you at the core heart, at your core heart. Can that manipulate you if it's used with the wrong intentions? Of course it can. But song has that power. I'm just using an example to describe how the soul has a sense of things. But because there are negative forces in this world that obfuscate the truth and obfuscate and doesn't allow us to achieve clarity, that's why we need to have all the other factors I described earlier. But the ultimate goal is to have that strong sense of knowing what is true and what is not true. Now this brings me to a big question that people have about morality. There's moral relativism, there's absolute morality. Moral relativism is somewhat based on the consensus, based on social standards and so on. There was a time in the ancient Greeks considered it benevolence to kill a child that's born handicapped, physically handicapped, mentally handicapped. They saw that as liberation for the child and for their family, not to live a life of misery. Some rejected that. The Jewish people rejected it, and they were called barbarians. Today we all know, at least in most societies, that that's barbaric to kill a child that's handicapped. Because the child is a life. Yes, it's true that the child and his family will face challenges, but it's the dignity and sanctity of life. Just to give you an example, moral relativism is when human beings decide what is right and what is wrong. That, of course, creates confusion. So how do you know what is truly right? There's an aspect of absolute right and wrong. So yes, when you go to a religious system, a belief system, let's take Judaism or Christianity or Islam, so there are a book of laws. What is right, what is wrong? And there's an absolute element to it. It's not relative. That's not arbitrary. Obviously, there are always exceptions to every given situation. Thou shalt not murder. Everybody can agree to that. But then there's war, self-defense. But there is a compass. There is a standard. Now, am I stating that you have to have a belief system to come to absolute morality? To a certain extent, yes. You need to accept the authority of a higher moral authority. Some will call it God. You can call it whatever name you like, but it means it's not you and I deciding it, because that can be very arbitrary and very fluctuating and wavering and not consistent at all. Even man-made systems like, let's say, the Constitution of the United States, we accept to be not absolute, but it's the absolute arbiter of law and order in our country. You can debate, you can write an amendment, you can debate the interpretation, but you have to have a law that people are following, or else it becomes anarchy. So this takes us back as well to clarity. There's some people who seem to have a sense of what is right and wrong, and some people that don't. I know this itself can be debated. One will say, I know what's right and wrong, and say, you don't know. And the other one will say, you don't know. And yet there is something inside of us that could make sense of it. It's always good, again, to have confirmation from other sources, friends and so on, that can help corroborate the truth of something. But this goes back to our fundamental belief system. You know where confusion reigns most? When people don't have that sense of right and wrong, the sense of boundaries. I'm not getting into which boundaries. There are many, many boundaries. But when you see boundaries blurred in all areas, and people say, well, right and wrong, it depends who you ask, depends on the situation, context. You know there's a problem. You know that many of us then have not been brought up with a type of clarity, what is right and what is wrong. everything goes. No one's going to say everything goes, but it's basically driven by that. And sometimes it crosses the line of some people's sensibilities, and they'll be offended. But that too is arbitrary. That too can change. So talking on a personal level, I grew up with a system of what is right and wrong. As a skeptic, naturally, I challenged it and I question it till this day. But it's very clear to me that you need to have some type of guidebook, because that's how it works. Here, I'm broadcasting right now a program. There are rules based on what I'm supposed to do, how you turn on a computer, what buttons you press. I can't just do whatever I like, or else it won't work. So we understand every machine, every appliance, every system has to have guidelines and laws. Every company, every organization. You don't follow those laws, what you have is a breakdown of order, and a breakdown of things won't work. Simple as that. But when it comes to moral decisions, that's where it gets more complicated. Because a computer, everyone can agree. You follow this. This is how you turn on a refrigerator. This is how you shut it off. It doesn't affect us personally. But when it comes to personal decisions, that's where things get more complicated. And that's why you need to have some type of higher system. I came to the conclusion that I can't prove everything that I was taught is absolute truth. But I do know that a lot of it resonates and a lot of it makes it work. I see life works. Someone just asked me the other day, why should I get married? I'm dating someone, we're living together. So I explained to them the reasons. Can you function without it? Some people function. Question is to what extent? So when you start looking at certain guidelines, certain, we'll call it institutions, established by belief systems, whether it's in the Torah or other places, you come to realize it works. It's the healthy way to make a family thrive and other benefits to the human condition and the human psyche. So therefore, when you see the general system works and really makes you a better person, then even the things you don't have absolute proof for or absolute clarity, you say, 1 second, if the system in general is correct, even though you have questions, you do have to accept certain things. When the medical community has helped people become healthier people, has extended life expectancy, has healed different diseases, you're not going to question everything a doctor tells you. You can go to another doctor to get another opinion. But do you know exactly how Advil works? So you could say, 1 second, maybe we're being manipulated by the whole pharmaceutical industry with the doctors in collusion. It's possible. But why don't most of us go by that narrative? Because we see in other areas that it works. So that conspiracy theory that the whole thing is a farce doesn't resonate really. Are there aspects that I'm sure that are corrupt and are economically driven? I am sure. Not doubting that. So that goes back to how do we use our minds, how do we use our tools to discern what is right, what is wrong. But I mean to say that certain systems begin to prove themselves by simply making things work. In marriage and family, where there's a lot of emotions and much subjectivity, there are certain things that work that make your children healthier, that make your marriage more productive, more harmonious. And based on those type of truths, you have that compass that allows you to navigate. So this is a big topic. Much more can be said. The key thing is free yourself from the influences that have brainwashed you or me, so you can start looking at things in a more objective manner. Try to find the voice of your soul in all of this. When Abraham went on his journey, Lech Lecha, the Bible, the Torah tells us, it says God said to him, leave your subjectivity behind, the influences, social influences, parental influences, and your own inner subjectivity. And then you will find yourself, you'll find your voice. You'll find your inner soul's voice. That's what we're looking for. And always access people that you can trust. And you can test that. Establish your support system that will help you navigate through the labyrinth, the thorns, the thicket that so much consumes this confusing world, to the point that you can find that light that shines. And above all, be proactive. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Find that voice and act on it. When you're kind to someone, you can rest assured that's clarity and that's truth. When you lift yourself up above the din of our routines and the daily grind, that's the truth. And all that light helps find clarity. A little light dispels darkness. Thank you. This has been Simon Jacobson. Another part of the series that we're doing now, 60 Days, 60-Day Journey, based on my book, 60 Days, A Spiritual Guide to the High Holidays. Finding clarity in times of confusion. Please check out all our offerings at meaningfullife.com. Subscribe to them. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share, and love to hear your feedback, thoughts, comments, suggestions. Be blessed and be well.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.